Is Astro a Sony mascot? Well, Nicolas Doucet isn't so sure. While the soft-spoken head of Team Asobi recognizes that the plucky little robot has the makings of a marquee character, and while it's become the face of the studio and even graces its logo, he also doesn't think it's his place or the studio's place to say. On a recent trip to Team Asobi's studio in Japan, we got an up-close look at how Astro came to be and the design philosophy that drives the studio's playful, polished little automaton. At first, Team Asobi's work wasn't meant to be seen directly by consumers. It was an internal R&D studio under the umbrella of Sony's Japan studio, composed mostly of ex-developers and devoted to developing tools and techniques for other Sony studios. There were no grand ambitions to break into game development or make a cute mascot, but in hindsight, Doucet said the turn towards public development was probably inevitable.
I asked, to put some of our tech demos, at the time it was PlayStation 4, into the console, and that's when we had to kind of go back into making games. But I think, honestly, over time, probably we would have felt the same way. I think staying in R&D and R&D only, because we were all like ex-game developers. We had, there were people who came from projects such as, Gravity Rush at the time, or in my case I was working on other games, and I think sooner or later we would have wanted to go back into making full-on games, I'd imagine. Yeah. So that was a request, but it's a good one, I think.
The request came in 2012 to help develop mini-games for the Playroom, a showcase for the PlayStation 4's augmented reality technology using the PlayStation camera released in 2013. It was composed of only a few mini-games, but one of them was a star in the making. AR bots let you fling little robots into your living room, where they would roam around and interact with each other or with objects you draw and fling into the screen. But they bear an unmistakable resemblance to Astro. Since they were meant to be squat little characters sitting on your living room floor, the team designed them to have certain baby-like qualities. They wanted you to feel protective of the little bots. Unless you're Ice-T. Still, all the pieces were there. Adorable, playful little robots who live inside of your PlayStation controller. Japan Studio released a few other add-ons for the Playroom with similar visual styles, like Toymaker and Ninja Bots. It had all the makings of a franchise, but it would be years before it received another game, and a more identifiable name. When Sony released the Playroom VR in 2016, the robot character was front and center, complete with a rebranding as Astro. Japan Studio wanted the name to be short, snappy, and easy to pronounce in any language. Plus, Doucet joked that they imagined picking an A name because it might put them at the top of the alphabetical listings. The VR game had one short platforming minigame called Robots Rescue, which was particularly well received as a standout of the package. That expanded into Astro Bot Rescue Mission in 2018, a full-fledged platforming game exclusive to PlayStation VR. It received glowing reviews, which paved the way for Astro's Playroom as a pack-in for the PlayStation 5 in 2020, which was also well received. Again and again, Japan Studio had been given the task of showcasing PlayStation tech, and it had consistently risen to the occasion. From an R&D support studio to a front-facing developer, it had come into its own, and the little AR robot, now firmly renamed Astro, had grown along with it. It was only a matter of time before the studio got a rebranding of its own. In 2021, Sony announced that the broader Japan studio would be winding down, and Astro's creators, Team Asobi, would become its own studio. Doucet announced at the time that the studio would be staffing up, and Sony unveiled a new logo that put Astro front and center. It was finally time to pitch a full-fledged Astro game. To sell the idea, the team focused on a few key pillars, some with buzzy portmanteau nicknames, and mapped them onto a spectrum of ages and experience levels that each would appeal to. Technomagic was the name given to Asobi's unique ability to wring delightful surprises out of PlayStation's technology, and the studio imagined it would carry widespread appeal. And while Astro's Playroom was a veritable museum of PlayStation history, this new game would be a PlayStation fiesta of references to PlayStation's history. That captures not just the story and spirit of the game, but this time Astro would go much deeper into its references to PlayStation history by introducing dozens of VIP characters, recognizable heroes from the past given a robot makeover, some with their own unique crafted stages to emulate their respective famous games. These robots would express their own sometimes softened personas through their visual style and animations, like the angry cute Kratos robot. Also for the first time, the cameos include third-party characters from outside of Sony studios. Art director Sebastian Brockner said Team Asobi found third-party developers were very amenable to the idea.
It is a huge celebration of all PlayStation history for the last 30 years. So hence a lot of our partners actually were really keen when we approached them. Yeah, please, this sounds great. We want to be part of this. So it was an unbelievable honor to hear this sort of response from our partners, and we took incredible care of trying to fully and respectfully recreate whatever the essence of these games is and recapture that in the style of our game.
Making a full-fledged platformer that maintains the pace of surprises from Astro's Playroom was a Herculean task, but Team Asobi has developed a workflow to help generate and test new ideas at a rapid pace. It all starts with post-it notes. At idea sessions, the meeting's leader, sometimes but not necessarily Doucet, will introduce a design challenge or idea they need to solve. Everyone in attendance sketches out a handful of ideas on post-it notes, which often resemble cartoon storyboards to express the idea behind an attack pattern or a character animation. These get hung on the wall, combined, and culled down. The team emphasized that everyone is included in these sessions, programmers and game designers. Once an idea has been settled, one designer and programmer are given the tasks to work collaboratively for about 2 weeks to prototype it. Then the idea gets tested and refined through group playtest sessions. Multiply this process by the significantly expanded studio, and Team Asobi was able to generate a steady stream of ideas for stages, bosses, and surprises. The rapid prototyping is also aided through a live link tool that allows designers to make changes to stage layouts that are reflected in a playable state instantaneously. It's easy to see how a designer and programmer working collaboratively could test and iterate quickly, so that their design is as polished as it can be before presenting it to the broader team for playtesting. The rapid prototyping means that Doucet, as well as other senior staff, have to be very careful about filtering ideas and driving forward towards the strongest material. But he also stressed the importance of trusting his team to run with an idea and see what sticks.
Like a few of us that think, okay, this idea is really, it's not gonna work. However, the person doing the implementation really believes in it, thinking, no, that's gonna work. And we have a quick conversation, but then we have to be able to accept that if the person doing the execution of it is going to be programming that, has the vision for how it's going to be good, then we have to try, right? You have to give a lot of trust that goes into each individual, and where their instinct lies, we have to listen very much. And there's a lot of ideas in the game that, if you'd asked me on paper, is it going to be a good idea? My gut feeling as kind of maybe be on the safe side, I would have said, nah, it's probably going to fail. But then the person who did it, carried the vision and saw things that I didn't see. And so it has to be, and that's teamwork, I suppose, like no one person is holding the key to every situation, right?
Can you...
With Astro Bot, Team Asobi's most iconic creation is finally coming into its own with a big original game. But if he's destined to become a long-term PlayStation mascot, Doucet says it's up to the fans, not Asobi or even Sony.
I don't feel like it's for us to decide. I think with a lot of mascots, it's like over time, through several iterations, and there were qualitative iterations, they grew onto people, and people, adopted them and could associate, the brand to these characters, and then they became mascots. But that was decided by the public, not by the design, right?
He says it's easy to just design a character and make it represent a brand for 5 years, as many advertising mascots do. But when it comes to classic, iconic mascots like Mickey Mouse, it was just designed to be good and endearing. And then the character grew into the role.
I think it's we have to be humble about it, So of course, it would be amazing if one day that can be the case. But for the time being, I think we have to solidify the base. We have to continue making great games. And then, if organically that happens, I think it'd be great. But
so is Astro a Sony mascot? Like so much else we've seen from Team Asobi, it's about buckling down and doing the work and letting the rest follow. This was just a chunk of Steve Watt's awesome feature on Astro Bot. I highly suggest you read the full article, and I will leave that in the description below. Thanks for watching.